Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Mehler. I thought it might be helpful to you if I were to give you a brief screencast of each of the chapters that we'll be going over from now until the end of the semester. Chapter 13 is going to be about plant evolution and classification. I have this picture here from the Department of Agriculture because one of the things we protect the most are seeds, even more than our gold, because seeds are where we get our food from. Very, very important. And if our rice crop or corn crop goes down because of a disease, we need new seeds to replenish it. So Fort Collins in Colorado and countries all over the world have seed banks where they preserve their seeds. Very, very important. In this chapter, I'd like you to read 13.1 and 13.2. Don't worry about 13.3. I'm going to highlight what things are important for the quiz and important for you to study. So let's take a look at this. What are plants? They're multicellular eukaryotes with cell walls. Plant cells also have chloroplasts. A lot of this is review for us. We've studied a lot of this. How do plants obtain food? Most plants do it by photosynthesizing, but there are a few that have lost the ability and have to get their energy somewhere else. Some of these are like the predator you see here, which is a Venus flytrap, which lives in very nutrient-poor soil, but gets its nutrients from insects that it captures. Now, plants are super important. They supply food to us, as we just mentioned. They help maintain the atmosphere. They're putting a lot of oxygen. They're also holding a lot of carbon from the atmosphere. Plants recycle matter in the biogeochemical cycles. We'll see that a little bit later. And plants provide many products for our use, such as firewood, timber, fibers, medicines, dyes, pesticides, etc. And they create habitats for many, many organisms. One thing a lot of people may not know is that all plants have characteristic life cycle that includes alternation of generations. Now, this might be a little confusing, but basically what it means is one generation, many plants will clone themselves to reproduce. And in another generation, in the following generation, they will combine their sex cells with another plant so that they will breed sexually and asexually at the same at an alternate generations. So make sure you read that part carefully. This is probably going to be one of the most important diagrams for this, and I'd like to explain this. So if time is going from left to right on this diagram, non-vascular plants, plants that don't have pathways in them for water and nutrients to go up, plants like this are called non-vascular, and the only one that you might be familiar with are mosses. I don't think most of you would be familiar with liverworts or hornworts. These tend to be very small plants. They tend to be near the water. Mosses will be in moist forest soil as well, but these are the oldest known plants. As plants evolved down here, they started to become vascular. By vascular, we mean there's pathways within the stem, within the roots, within the leaves for water and nutrients to be transported. So take a look at this one. Ferns are a vascular plant, but then as we go in time, conifers, and then finally flowering plants. Flowering plants are a wildly successful type of plant. They are the newest plants, newest in the sense that only a few million years, something like 70 million years. So make sure you know this diagram and what it means. Older non-vascular, newer vascular plants, non-seed versus seed. Plants evolving a seed was a big jump forward in evolution because seeds then could be transported all over the place. As we know from our course, life started in the oceans. And eventually, that was true, also of plants, but eventually life on the land started. And by the time the earliest plants evolved, animals were already dominant things in the ocean. Plants were also constrained to the upper layer of water. Well, when plants started to invade the land, there were no predators on the land. It was all in the ocean. So over the next couple pages of your text, they're going to talk about life on land and how plants evolved. That first paragraph there, plants may have colonized the land as early as 700 million years ago. So that was actually just before the Cambrian explosion. Think of a timeline when you're reading this. Vascular plants evolve. So those are plants that have internal, what your book calls plumbing. They have xylem and phloem that moves liquids up and down with nutrients in them. They also, vascular plants, started to evolve lignin. Read about what lignin is, leaves, roots, and generated spores with 2 sets of chromosomes, which allowed for more diversity in their breeding. Seed plants, we mentioned a couple minutes ago that seeds were super important evolutionary leap forward. So make sure you read how important seeds were and what happened and why they were so important. There's 2 types. For example, most of you guys are familiar with pine cones. So a pine cone is a form of gymnosperm. If you look to the left there, that micropite, don't worry about that. You won't have to know that. But gymnosperm, think seed cones, conifers, and then finally angiosperms, where the more traditional flowering plant. This is a really good video where he explains primitive flowers or early flowers and why flowering plants are important. Please watch that one. This is the one, the amazing ways that plants defend themselves. This particular video is going to be the lead off for the quiz on Friday. There'll be this and 5 questions and then approximately 20 questions from chapter 13. You'll do this online and the answers will be sent back to me. So you'll have pretty much all day Friday to do this and it will be posted early Friday morning. You'll get an email from Ted Ed. So it won't come directly from me, so look for Ted Ed. There's the diagram again on the evolution of plants. That diagram is going to be on the quiz. There's 4 modern types of plants: non-vascular, and their name, vascular plants, seed plants, and flowering plants. They go from oldest geologically, the non-vascular, to the newest, the flowering plants. So very important to know that sequence. So there's 4 types of flowering plants. We just saw them in the previous, and they're going to talk about non-vascular plants here. Here's a picture of Bryophytes. That's a really, really small plant. It has no way for water to get through it except right in through the green part. It says most bryophytes are small. They not only lack vascular tissue, vascular means those highways within the plant. They also lack true leaves, seeds, and flowers. So this is a very primitive old plant. It's called a bryophyte. And the diversity of non-vascular plants, there's 3 types of modern non-vascular plants that are still around today. The liverworts, hornworts, and mosses, we mentioned them briefly. The one that you're probably familiar with are mosses, but read those 3, get a sense of what the non-vascular plants are. Here's pictures of liverwort. You've probably seen them. If you take some walks in the woods, there's hornwort, a little rarer in our area, but moss. Most of us know what moss looks like. So those are 3 non-vascular primitive plants that are still around today. Tracheophytes are the vascular plants, and the word tracheophyte means tube plants, and those tubes carry water all throughout the plant. The earlier vascular plants came quickly to dominate the terrestrial ecosystem. The word terrestrial there means land. Here is the inside of a stem at the bottom here. Make sure you read this carefully. Make sure you know what xylem, that's how you pronounce that, X-Y-L-E-M, and phloem are. And these are tissues that water goes up and down in. There's a good diagram at the bottom there, right here, which shows that. I'm trying to not use the cursor here because it brings up that from the Google Slides. The evolution of vascular plants, they created true roots. That's the first one that's circled in red there. And they also evolved stems made of tissue and lignin. And vascular plants evolved leaves to collect light. So vascular plants, much newer geologically than non-vascular plants. So make sure you read this page. Seed plants came even later, and they're also called spermatophytes. And the evolution, as the book says here, the evolution of seeds by vascular plants was a very big deal. And why was it a big deal? Because of these reasons right down here. We got the embryo, the seed coat, and the seed has stored food in it. Big, big advantage. So read this part carefully. This shows you a typical plant seed, might be an avocado. And notice that the seed, the embryo, is right down in here. It's right down in there. The rest of this is just food and the coating for the seed. Dandelions have tiny parachutes. These are seeds that help them with the parachutes on them to help them get around. Maple seeds flitter further a little bit away from the tree. And burdock seeds, that's sort of like Velcro. Velcro will attach to furs of animals and be buried somewhere else, far away from the initial plant. Again, make sure you read about gymnosperms and angiosperms and know the difference between those. And then flowering plants. We talked a little bit about flowering plants when we talked about Gregor Mendel. And Mendel knew that there was a male and female part to the plant. Stamen is the male part and pistil is the female part. And make sure you read about these, remind yourself of those, we'll have that. There's a diagram that may be on with the male and female part. Remember, the female part is the pistil. The stamen is where the pollen's coming from. The anther is the male part. And where it says ovary right here, right in here, these are ovules that when the pollen comes in and goes down here, that will become a seed. We talked a little bit about that before. So there are a couple videos at the very end that I'd like you to watch. Watch this one, which is what causes allergies. This one about a pioneering man by the name of Ron Finley, who's doing amazing work on the vacant lots of Los Angeles. It's a very funny, quick watch. He lives in South Central Los Angeles and really could be an inspiration for urban gardeners. And the last video is a link at the top there, a teacher growing green in South Bronx. And this man's name is Steve Ritz. Steve Ritz is one high-energy 6th grade teacher, and what he has done with kids in the poorest section of the South Bronx is just amazing. It's a really inspiring talk. Again, short talk, 9 minutes. I'd like you to watch that. So I'm just going to go back here real quickly. As you can see, I've tried to highlight areas that are important for you. Remember that this video, The Amazing Ways Plants Defend Themselves, will lead off our quiz on Friday. I hope you guys are staying safe. Remember, keep your distance from people. This is going to get a lot worse than it gets better. It's going to be hard for us, but hang in there. I'll have some information about coronavirus coming up through email. Take care of yourselves, everybody. If you have any questions, of course, always email me. See ya.